विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ज्ञानापस्थितकत्कतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। Can we chant 3 verses, sixth chapter, verse number 30, 31 and 32. Number 30. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. Sarvam cha mai pashyati. Sarvam cha mai pashyati. Tasyaham na pranashyami. Tasyaham na pranashyami. Sachame na pranashyati. Sachame na pranashyati. Sarvabhutassthitam yo mam. Sarvabhutassthitam yo mam. Bhajati ekatvamasthitaha. Bhajati ekatvamasthitaha. Sarvatha vartamanopi. Sarvatha vartamanopi. Sayogi mai vartate. Sayogi mai vartate. Atmaupanyena sarvatra. Atmaupanyena sarvatra. Samam pashyati yorjuna. Samam pashyati yorjuna. Sukham va yadi va dukkham. Sukham va yadi va dukkham. Sayogi paramo mataha. Sayogi paramo mataha. So in verse number 30, Sri Krishna gives us an introduction to bhakti, introduction to devotion. Just an introduction. Why? Because as it normally is done in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedantic texts also, when they have chapters, what is normally done is, towards the end of one chapter, you begin to introduce the topic of the next chapter. So, the bhakti and the topic of devotion will be fully taken up in chapter 7. But here, just to signal the transition, the introduction to bhakti is given in number 30. So in saying that, what he's saying is this. So another thing to look at this. The bhakti can be segmented into two parts. One is introductory bhakti, also can be termed as inferior bhakti. Inferior, it's not as though it is bad bhakti, but not as good as the second stage, which is the superior bhakti. So introductory bhakti and the superior bhakti. And this is very fundamental to the Hindu way of life, because the introductory bhakti is done with a specific place, time, and situation. So visiting the temple on specific dates is the first bhakti, is the introductory bhakti, the so-called inferior, which is called apara bhakti. And what that means, and that's good, because I think one of the things that happens is that your whole mindset changes when you are in a temple. You become more focused towards Ishvara. You become more tolerant toward others. Like, for example, supposing you are in I'm just making it up, just coming from India, this is so interesting. The whole way of dealing with crowds is very different in India than in here. And those of you that are from India will, but you will forget it. Like there is no such thing as an orderly queue. No such thing. I don't know if I ever told you this or not. My father was still alive at that time. This is now 20 years ago. So we had some money in a bank. And so I told my dad that, I'm not going to I'm not coming back to India, so let's just remove all the money. So we went to a bank, and it was just opening. There was nobody there. And so we went and asked for a check to be withdrawn. So then there's so many steps. You have to go to one step, then you have to go to some other window, and then the third window will actually give you the money and all that. So my father was standing there, and this person was in the window, was just looking at some books. And my dad had his hand all the way through the window, like this. So I was saying, my dad, just relax. Why are you, because he's not even looking at you. Why are you extending your hand? He says, this is the way it is done. You know what? You won't believe this. 2 or 3 minutes later, 3 minutes later, my father has been standing in line. Another guy comes in who is much taller than my dad. His hand is much. So the fellow comes in through the same window and puts his hand about 6 inches above. So this fellow, he looks up. He just looks up. What is he going to do? Is he going to say who was there first or anything, something like that? He got the other fellow first. So my father winked at me and says, did I tell you this? This is exactly what happened. If you go for a bus, everybody go into, they break at the, first they will be all standing there, although, as soon as the bus comes in, there is no line. Whoever is the strongest, quickest, you just push everybody around. So when you go to a place like this, you say, what is this? But when you go to a temple, if person pushes you around, you don't feel bad. You say, let him, he's also a Bhakta of Ishvara, I'm also a Bhakta of Ishvara, let him go. So all I'm saying is that it is very useful to go to a temple because your mindset becomes so much softer. But here's the situation. As soon as you come back from the temple going or just doing a puja at home, whatever, a specific action is only a small action. The rest of the day, you are still fighting with people. You are still, your mind hardens again. That softness is gone. This is called apara bhakti. Apara bhakti means at least you have a bhakti. There's a lot of people who never even go to a temple. A lot of people don't even think about Ishvara. So compared to them, a person that goes to a temple, goes to pilgrimages, and does all of that is wonderful. But this bhakti is still apara bhakti. Then what is para bhakti? Para bhakti is where you study and understand the presence of Ishvara at all times. This is what verse number 30 is saying. It says, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. One who does not forget me, one who sees me. One who sees means one who's aware of the presence of the Creator everywhere. Sarvam chamai pashyati. Everything he sees, but nothing but residing in me alone. Remember, we went through this 3 stages of the knowledge. Remember last week, if I can recall that. So what are the 3 stages of the knowledge? The first stage is that I am different from my body-mind complex. The example there is that I am the electricity, I am not the appliance. I'm working through the appliance, but I am not the appliance. This is the first stage. I am the consciousness, I am the awareness, I am the Atma. This is if we have to really look into that first. If we don't look into that, then you cannot go to the second stage. So this is why it says that this bhakti, the para bhakti, the most superior bhakti, is jnana purvakam. Is jnana purvakam. Means that it must be preceded with some study and some knowledge and some awareness of what is going on, the viveka. So the first stage is that my reality is different from the body-mind complex. It may not be complete yet, but at least one should be introduced to this, number one. Then the second stage of the vidya is that my consciousness, the conscious, forget about my consciousness, the conscious, there's only one consciousness. And in fact, you can say mine. My consciousness is also in everybody else's consciousness. So these are the stages by which you now go to the second type of bhakti, where you now have an awareness that really everyone, even though they appear to be different from me, their Atma is the same as my Atma. There's only one Atma. This is the second stage of the vidya. So one is clarity in distinguishing between who I am, between the two segments, which is one is an appliance, the other one is the spirit behind it. The second one is that this spirit, if I understand clearly, the implication of this is that this spirit is the common amongst everybody. Not everybody has their own spirit, no. They have their own bodies, their minds, their shapes, ages, but no. The Atma for everyone is the same. And in fact, the Atma of all beings is the same. Interestingly enough, just the other day, I had a roof leak. Well, quite a severe roof leak. I had gone to India and then it rained so much while I was gone that some strange place inside the house just got completely. So anyway, so there was a guy had done the roof for me several years back, and he did a good job. I like him a lot. So I called him up, and so he came over and he looked into it, and I think he's got a handle on it. But anyway, it's so cold outside, so I offered him a cup of tea. I don't drink any coffee, so I said, can you have tea? And he said, okay, I'll have tea. So he came down and so on. So then somehow he asked me, what do you do? Normally, that I teach some classes, and what is it about? He turned it out to an interesting discussion. It turns out that he is a very devout Christian and goes to the church, and so on and so forth. So he was really curious about what Hinduism is, never heard about it, So then in the discussion, I mean, we had a wide-ranging discussion, so not going into all of that. But very interestingly enough, what he said, which I had kind of understood, I had heard that before, but I didn't know this very well. See, the Christianity believe that the spirit in a human being is different from animals. And in fact, there is a view in Christianity, they have so many differences there, that the animals don't have any spirit. But this person was saying they do have a spirit, but it's different from the human being spirit. And in fact, this is the reason where eating animals is not a problem. Not a problem, because it's not like you're killing a human being. It doesn't matter. Interestingly enough, that's not the case in the Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is it's the same Atma in everywhere. In an ant also, when it moves, it's the same Atma. The changes are in the upadhi, not in the spirit. Anyway, so this is the second stage, is that my Atma is among the same as a. So you see now, this itself will soften your attitude towards the others. This is a very interesting thing, how the apara bhakti can turn into para bhakti. The inferior bhakti, the first stage, gets into second one. The second one is where you begin, it's not that you just have to go to temple to soften your heart. Your heart is softened no matter where you are. And it might take a little while, we understand that, that's not an issue. But at least the goal is totally different. This is what the 30th verse is saying. He says, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati. Then the second line gives the result of this. Tasya aham na pranashyami. Sacha me na pranashyati. He says, the result of this vision is you never lose sight of me, Ishvara. And by the way, I don't lose sight of you. So it's a mutual thing. The very famous example given is that the river culminates its journey going back to where it came from, which is the ocean. This is the end point of all the rivers. So the river is, this whole cycle is a very interesting one, that you have clouds, you have rain, and then it comes down on the higher elevations and becomes a river, and the river goes back to, and the river never rests until it goes back to the ocean. And while it is going to the ocean, I remember this when my father used to live in Calcutta, and that was my first glimpse of the ocean. My real glimpse of the ocean was when I was 18, 19, when I went to Bombay. But this one was, there was, in fact, this Ganga, when it reaches the ocean, you don't know whether the Ganga is going towards the ocean or the ocean is coming towards the Ganga. It becomes kind of like a mutual thing. Exactly the same thing is being said here. Whether Ishvara is embracing you or you are embracing Ishvara, it doesn't matter. It's not clear. But it will happen. When will it happen? When you have the knowledge that, really speaking, there is presence of Ishvara everywhere. So this is what is being said. So this is the introduction to the two stages of bhakti. So here Swami Paramarthananda says that the apara bhakti is also called Dvaita bhakti. Duality, a bhakti of duality. You somehow tolerate everybody else, and but you keep them at a complete separate. That's so interesting. This is another observation in going to India. And I've noticed this before also. When we went for this Aim for Seva school opening in Madhya Pradesh, then the local Swami Aishwaryananda, he took us to a temple on the banks of Narmada called Omkareshwara Temple. I think I was telling you that. And then we also went to Ujjain to visit another temple. So I have seen this all in all of the pilgrimages, all the temples. 99% of the people that go there are poor. You can just tell from who they are and so on. Very few people, well-dressed and very educated and so on, go there. They don't come. It's very strange. And if they come, you know what? They only come if they get bypassed through the crowd. And so they are accompanied by a police officer and a bodyguard, and they are whisked through everything, and they have then they do a quick namaskara and then they go. But really almost everyone there are from villages, and their shraddha, you can look in their eyes, so beautiful. It's very strange. When you have a sort of an ego, who wants to go to a temple, dirty places, and so on and so forth. We don't want to go there. This is the problem. This is the bhakti of duality. And so slowly, this is the interesting thing, that if you go to, this is something peculiar about India, really. I don't think you will find this anywhere. You go to villages and you talk to people who may not be able to write their name, they've never studied. You ask them about Ishvara, they'll say, he's everywhere. Ishvara is everywhere. He is in my heart. Somehow they are just born into that knowledge. I have no idea how. Nobody tells them, no Vedanta classes are given or anything like this. Incredible. They're far ahead of the whole thing. I say that India is a punya bhumi. It may not be rich, it may be crowded, it may be polluted, but the people there have a certain sense of Ishvara, which is just amazing. Anyway, so the gist of it is that so here bhakti preceded with knowledge is very powerful. The bhakti which is not preceded with knowledge is fine, it's good, but nothing like a detailed study of how this is done, how this is happening, what is the nature of it. If you really look into that, it's very much like you can have some symptoms. If you have a problem, medical problem, then you can go to a pharmacist and get some relief right away. But if the disease persists, you have to study. Either you have to study yourself or you have to go to someone who has studied very well and then look into the very root of the problem. So jnanam is very important. And also, jnanam alone without bhakti means you have not understood. It's not just bookish knowledge where you still have your ego and you're still behaving badly. You are upset by the world and you're behaving badly just because you will study Vedanta. That's not because knowledge should really give you a certain softness. Your dealings with the world should really become more useful and beneficial to you. You should have a sense of freedom. Then alone a jnanam can be called jnana. And that only comes from bhakti. Because if you do not see this, it's not just paper knowledge. But you have to see that really this whole world is nothing but the handiwork of Ishvara. And everybody else is like me. There's no big difference. And it's interesting that, this is very famous in the 13th chapter where Arjuna is asking Krishna. It's very funny. At the end of, almost like the end of Gita, Arjuna asks, what is jnanam? What is knowledge? Hey, I've been telling you, what do you think, for the last so many chapters. Anyway, he's very, so here this is very interesting. Krishna does not say jnanam. Oh, jnanam means, absence of ignorance is jnanam. He doesn't say that. Very beautiful set of verses, as you know. We have done this before. We'll do it again. Amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsak shantir arjavam acharyo pasanam shaucham, etc., etc. 4 verses that are just so beautiful. First one is amanitvam. Amanitvam means absence of manitvam. What is manitvam? Ahankara. I am a very educated person. I have studied all the scriptures. And who is... Here I remember, I have also gone through the same thing. Really. In the beginning, when I started studying Vedanta, it really got into my head. I used to say, well, I'm so lucky, I'm so fortunate, and so on and so forth. These other people, they don't know much. But if they, and I used to just hold my up. And life has taught me that is not the way to do it. Until you become humble yourself, And I remember there was a satsang with Swami Dayanandji where one of the students made some comments like, Swamiji, when I meet with ordinary people, and Swamiji is a very, he never raises his voice. At that time he said, wait. What did you say just now? He says, what are you, extraordinary? Because you have not really seen the effect of that. You could be extraordinary, but you are not. And so this is what is called amanit. And so we all took heed, but it took a while of not knocking your head around it, and then you say, this is just like declaring victory too soon. Is what happens. I've conquered it. Now I've finished the topic. I've seen so many Upanishads at this, that, or the other, Brahma Sutra. I'm happy. But no. Not until you absorb it. Swami Paramarthananda said this so very nicely. The benefit is not eating the food, but in digesting it. Until you digest the food, it does not benefit you. Just because you've studied something, that doesn't mean anything. Anyway, so both jnanam and bhakti, and of course karma is part of a bhakti. It doesn't have to be, or you can say bhakti is part of karma, either one. It doesn't matter. So jnanam and the supporting aspects of it could be either bhakti. Here, the topic is bhakti, so we can say these two are interdependent. See, it's very beautiful. It is interdependent because you cannot have para bhakti until you have jnanam. And you cannot have jnanam until you have bhakti. Until you are really devoted to the advantages of it, not pedantic knowledge. So that is the topic that he's talking about. Let's see if there's anything else here before I go to the next verse. So, the other thing is that please don't forget the following fact, that this is a chapter devoted to nididhyasana. This is all about meditation. And what it means is meditation which is preceded by knowledge, right? Because we have again talked about it before, that nididhyasanam does not create new knowledge. New knowledge is only created in a classroom. Shravanam. Nididhyasanam is to enjoy the fruits of jnana. So you accelerate the process by thinking about it, by meditating on it, by creating your own condition. If you cannot meditate in the big crowd, just do it in your own room in the beginning. So, in a way, the fruits of nididhyasanam is to become a superior bhakta of Ishvara. So we are talking about the advantage, right now. So the topics we had was, it's interesting, it's going to end soon. So we had 5 topics. So one was the Bahiranga Sadhana, which we did before. The Bahiranga Sadhana was the general attitude during the day. Then was the Antaranga sadhana, which was the specific sadhana before you do meditation. Remember, we went through all of that. Then the third one was the Swarupa of Nididhyasanam, of how Nididhyasanam is done. So we did that, number 3. The fourth one is the phalam, the result of Nididhyasanam. This is where we are just now. So the result of Nididhyasanam is Sarvatra Darshanam, where your mind is softened, where you don't say this is a spiritual, this is non-spiritual. Everything is spiritual. It's all the same. So this kind of attitude change is the phalam of Nididhyasana. Okay? So then this is further explained or further taken up in verse number 31. So in verse number 31, let's look at that. We turn the page to that. So, sarva bhuta sthitam yah mam bhajati ekatvam asthitaha sarvatha vartamanopi sa yogi mai vartate. Sarvata varimanopi. So very similar to number 30. So here, let's look at the so the one who has attained the vision of oneness worships me, who I am present in all beings. That yogi abides in me, though engaged in every way. So sarvata vartamanopi, no matter what you're doing, your vision of the sameness of the entire creation is never lost. That is the true yogi. This is what we have to come up to. So a very continuation, so nothing drastically new in this one. So it's just a consolidation. I think there might be a couple of things that are... Yeah, here Swami Paramarthananda made a point that sometimes what happens is that sannyasis, so from a formal education also standpoint, the sannyasi is not required to do daily puja. In fact, they can, you find many times, they don't, you may or may not, doesn't matter. Our Swami Tattvavidananda, for example, he doesn't really believe in daily puja. The reason he doesn't is not as though it is something bad, because he's in puja all the time. There's no specific puja that he has to do. The sannyasi must do this, must do that. No. If he enjoys doing it, that's wonderful. So interesting that we are talking about Swami Paramarthananda's commentary. So when I was at that same temple, no, not the first temple, the second temple in Ujjain, just a couple of weeks ago. So Swami Aishwarabandha told me, so this second temple that I went to, this is called Mahakaleshwara, in Ujjain, is a much bigger temple and much more visited. A lot of crowds there, very difficult to, to get in, but somehow we were able to find time to go. And what they do is, They have a Shivalinga, and they perform daily worship to it every 2 or 3 hours, where the Shivalinga is completely, just like we do in our ashram also, that there of course we have the Dakshinamurti Stotra, Dakshinamurti Vigraha, where we completely clean every day and then redecorate it. In this place they do it every 3-4 hours. Sometime, I forget how it is. And it begins at 3 a.m. in the morning with a 4-hour puja. And Swami Aishwarvardhana tell me that Swami Paramarthananda has been to the 3 a.m. puja twice. This is remarkable. Because you have to sit cross-legged on a stone, cold stone surface for 4 hours while the puja is performed. And you might think, Swami Paramarthananda is a jnani, he is a very wise person. He doesn't have to do puja, but you know what? He enjoys it. He enjoys it. And if you look at my habits, I used to do puja every day, complete Abhishekam for a number of years. And now I don't do it, but I light up a lamp and I do meditation in front of Dakshinamurti every day. And whenever I have a chance to do puja, I do it. So it doesn't really matter. Slowly, once you start seeped into it. So this is what verse number 31 is saying. He says, Sarvatha vartamanopi sa yogi mai vartate. He says, it doesn't matter where you are and what you're doing. If you reach that way of living, then you do not forget Ishvara. And not forgetting Ishvara is, it just comes in where if something occurs which is not to your liking, it's something very simple where you miss a light. And, you are anxious to going and something like this. Then in the old time you'll say, oh my gosh, how did I do that? And you may have somebody else who cuts in front of you. But then you find that this is Ishvara's wish that you miss the light. Let it be. So this is just a small thing, but this kind of an attitude starts to seep into you. Because you believe there is something more than that is just, why should I have my way? If it happens, it happens. So this is the meaning of Sarvata Vartamanopi sa yogi mai vartate, means that the attitude of the person changes in the way. Swami Paramarthananda gives a beautiful example. He says, nowadays the Western culture is Mother's Day, Valentine Day. Well, forget about Valentine Day, there's a Mother's Day, where you have to send a card to your mom saying, I love you. The funny part is, I don't know many of you, I'm much older than most of you. When I was young, do you know we never used to celebrate birthdays? There's no birthday celebration. And somebody will say, oh yeah, that's right. But there's no big deal to it and so on. I used to live with my grandparents, and my mom and dad were long away from me. I was not there for quite a few years. And so my mom would remember it. And in those days, there's no telephone. No telephone or anything. So what she would do, I still remember, a month or so prior to that, she would send me a parcel of some small cookies or something like this. And when it arrives, we have no idea, but sometimes right on the birthday, sometimes before birthday, sometimes after the birthday. but there was no big celebration. So this thing about birthday celebration and Mother's Day, Mother's Day was so funny. So all this life, so this is what Swami Paramartha is saying, that the culture is that you love your mother naturally. You don't have to express it on a given day. So a given day is apara bhakti, going to like a temple. A natural love for the mother is para bhakti. So it was the funny part was this was my mother passed away like 5-6 years ago, but sometime prior to that, I think about maybe 10 years ago, 5 or 6 years before she passed away, I never used to, I thought that, she grew up in India where there was, and I also grew up where there was no Mother's Day, Father's Day, all this was not there. 10 years ago, I happened to call her 3 or 4 days after the Mother's Day. You would call her once a week or so just to say hello. You know what she told me? Hey, you didn't call me on the Mother's Day. I said, oh my God, where did she find out about this? Oh, I still remember that. So anyway, this is exactly like that, where going to temple to remember Ishvara is like Ishvara Day. But really speaking, you should be there all the time. That's the meaning of it. Then number 32. Atma upamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yo Arjuna. I think, let's see. Atma upanyena. This is a word that I am not familiar with. I think I have to look that up, but I don't know how to resolve it. But anyway, the meaning is there. Atma aupanyena sarvatra samam pashyati to Arjuna sukham va yadi dukkham ya yogi paramo mataha. Continuing the same thought. And so it means that the mind of a wise person, jnani, expands to such an extent that you begin to identify with everyone. Because right now what happens is that only if your own children get sick, you become sad. But if you see any sick child, you become sad. And so this kind of an identification with the masses, not just your own, becomes a hallmark of the jnani. There was a real somebody told me this real story in our Rishikesh ashram. I think I may have told you this. But so there was a Mahatma living in the Rishikesh ashram, and it was Rishikesh in the winter time is very cold. It's just because there's no central heating and it gets very cold. So one time, this Swami who was living there came back from either teaching a class or something, and he wanted to go back to his room, and his blanket was missing. So he asked the people around there, has somebody taken the blanket for cleaning? Or somebody said no. Then one of the chowkidars said, I saw a boy who was rushing out with a blanket. I didn't know who it was. I think this was yours. So he's stolen it from you. So the response of the Swami, as others had said, he says, my God, I'm so sorry. Really? He said, I don't understand. That was such an old, smelly blanket with holes in it. If he really needed it, I would have liked to give him a new one. He was feeling sorry for the guy instead of saying, what it's feel, this, we have thieves in the place and this, that or the other. He says the person needed it, he got it. This is exactly what the feeling is. that we maybe aspire to become that. It is not an easy thing to do. So that's what he's saying. And so here the benefit of knowledge is universal love. See how the knowledge transitions into love. Because this is a common thing that all of us face, even us students and so on. Others in our families and friends and so on feel that we are pursuing something very selfish. We are not really not paying attention to others. We are doing something on our own, for our own good. This is the feeling that people have. And in the beginning that may be the case. But the fact of the matter is, it's a withdrawal for the sake of expansion. I want the ability not just to love my own circle, but to expand that circle. This is what my objectives are. I may not be there yet. That's a different thing, but that is so. The benefit of Nididhyasanam is an expansion of love, and not for sake of anybody else. This must be understood. It's not as though you say, you are a bad person because you're not loving everybody else. It's not pushing it. It's the other way around. What we need to learn is so that others don't bother me. It's for my own good that I need to expand the circle of love, not for anybody else. Here is very interesting. There was a real case where I think I may have, this is one of my stories that I often tell. I was reading about this, about Raman Maharshi. That Raman Maharshi was not a teacher per se. He was not a Shrotriya. He didn't know the details of all of the various Upanishads, and he was not a normal teacher, a Vedantic teacher. But he was a very wise man. He saw the whole reality very clearly. And so whatever he spoke in his satsang was the truth. And absolutely one of the greatest people that was alive in the last century. So it appears that there was a story that there was a householder who had a family, some friends, some children and so on. And he used to come to the classes regularly for a number of years. No class, but some satsang. So one day he asked for a private meeting with Ramana Maharshi and said, Swamiji, I need your permission to become a sannyasi. And Ramana Maharshi knew him quite well, knew his family and situation. He was one of the people who lived close by. So Ramana Maharshi told him, the answer is no. And I can't even explain why I said no to you. So the person was very disappointed. He says, that's a double negative, where first of all, you're not giving me permission and you're not even explaining why this is. But I accept whatever you say because I think you're a wise person. So he says, do this. Come back a year from now and ask the same question. Think about it. I won't tell you all the answers, but I'll see you in a year from now. You continue your satsang and so on. So a year from then, the person comes up again and says, Swamiji, now do I have your permission? So Raman Maharshi reportedly, this is in some book I read this. So in the second time he said, the answer is still no, but I will now explain why I said no. So he said, okay, at least explain it to me. He said, I sense you are trying to take sannyasa because you want to escape the responsibility of running a family. This is what I conclude. This is not a good reason. So the person said, Swamiji, but you have given sannyasas to some others. On what basis did you give it to them? So Ramana Maharshi told him, listen, the basis on which I will give you sannyasa is where the need of the population in general exceeds the loss of your own family, your responsibility towards your family. Because there is bound to be. When you leave your family and you've got a wife and children, there's bound to be some disruption in their lives, no doubt about it. But I have to balance it by seeing what's your value towards, if you love the society to such a degree that others are really anxious to learn from you, and you don't have the time to teach because you are so involved in your own family, I would say then if you want to do it, I would give it to you, not otherwise. So this is the thing. I think the students of Vedanta are anxious to learn. In the beginning, yes, there is a disruption of the family, no doubt about it. But it should not be for escape from the responsibility of the life. You should also begin to see that there is a rainbow happening where I can become a little bit more universal in my way of looking at it. And I can share my love and knowledge in teaching or whatever it is. In that sense, it is an expansion of your love as a result of knowledge. So this is the, and actually this is what happened in Swami Tattvavidananda's case, because he was a householder and he has a wife and a son, and yet Swami Dayanandji must have felt the same. I mean, I can only guess this is what must have happened, that he gave him sannyasa thinking, and this is amazing. He was a very good technology leader. He was in the biosciences and he was earning a lot of money, well respected and so on. But through his teachings and his knowledge and so on, he got to a degree where he said, there is a larger world that I can contribute to. And this must have really become very apparent to Swami Dayanandji, because he was happy to give him sannyasa. And what a wonderful thing that something else has happened. So, so that's the sense of this okay, so with this verse number 33, the fourth topic in this chapter is now over. The fourth chapter is Nididhyasanam Phalam. And in a summary, this is a very beautiful description, because Nididhyasanam should result in your accepting of the world to a greater degree where it doesn't bother, the world doesn't bother you as much. This is the result of the meditation. It's not to come up with some something where instantaneously something. It's a gradual process, and becoming more universal in your approach to life is the ultimate phalam of nididhyasana. So this is the fourth topic. Bahiranga sadhana, antaranga sadhana, dhyana swarupam, nididhyasana swarupam, and nididhyasana phalam. Now the last topic of this chapter is now begun. And this is summarized in verse number 33 to 36. There may be some other topics, but these are the main 5 topics that Swami Paramarthananda had summarized. This is the 5th topic. This 5th topic is begun with verse number 33. So let's at least verbalize it, let's chant it, and then we'll go into that in the remaining time. Arjuna uvacha yoyam yogastvaya proktaha samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatvat sthitim sthiram. This is the topic which is obstacles to the practice of meditation. And this is expressed in the form of a question from Arjuna, which says, Hey Krishna, this yoga that you have talked about as sameness, this vision of seeing Ishvara everywhere and so on, I get it. But I don't see this happening to me. Because my mind is going all over. I try to bring it to an understanding, it stays for a while, but this is not what my life is. So there is a distance between what you're telling me and what I'm absorbing. I can't just, I see the wisdom of doing what you're telling me, but I'm not able to achieve this. Why? What do I need? What's your advice for me with respect to that? This is the topic. This is the obstacle to the thing. So here, in summarizing the one other, before we go into this, couple of some other words to summarize the advantages of nididhyasana. Okay, so some other words just to consolidate the understanding. So here, Swami Paramarthananda says that nididhyasanam converts jnanam into jnana nishtha. An absorption. Like we said before also, after you eat, there needs to be a time where you let it be digested. Eat slowly, don't exercise too much, enjoy it, and eat the right stuff. And so all of that that's the method of nididhyasana, jnana nishtha. And as a result of that, you will see samadarshanam. Samadarshanam means that your ananda, your feeling of happiness, will permeate through the day, not just in specific places. You may have to artificially inculcate the habit of just closing your eyes and doing meditation, and all that is fine. But the feeling of being okay with as you are, not requiring anything else for your happiness, will persist during the day. This is the Samadarshana. And also compassion towards others. Instead of criticizing someone, you become more tolerant of their behavior. Say, poor guy's had a bad day, whatever it is, doesn't matter. This is the kind of thing. And I think a very good definition of the advantages of doing Meridhyasanam, as Swami Paramathananda pointed out, is the psychological freedom that you get in your life. Psychological, because really speaking, if you analyze your own thinking, your mind is the one that is creating obstacles. You look at someone, but through your own eyes. And usually it is very biased eyes. So to remove the bias from it, you begin to see the beauty in the whole creation. So this is what is called psychological freedom. So now, with respect to the fifth topic, let's begin in the short term on the obstacles to receiving this. So this is a big topic which appears in various texts. In fact, in our Mandukya Karika, quite a bit later on, in the third book that we will study, Swami Paramathananda actually has referred to it. This will be discussed in about 10 verses. And the topic is Mano Nigraha. Mano Nigraha. So the obstacle is something in your attitude which is not allowing you to gain the benefit. So the word obstacle is a very good one. Very good one. It means the following. That means that it is nothing wrong with you. Your basic swarupa is excellent. But for you to gain your own happiness, there is something that is obstructing it. Very much like the cataract surgery. Cataract surgery means that your eye is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Your cornea and all of the basic elements are just fine. But there is something covering it that needs to be acted upon. So this is what is called Mano Nigraha. And Swami Paramathananda beautifully said, he says, when do I know that my mind is an obstacle? How do I know this? He says the way to evaluate that is that your understanding of Vedanta is pretty complete. In other words, Shravana, that also doesn't happen because we think we get just attending a few classes or we have enough knowledge. No. There needs to be looking at it from various angles and really developing some question answers and doubts. This is Shravanam. Okay, so supposing that has been done. Okay, so now I should be happy with it. It doesn't happen. Why? Because it is compartmentalized in one corner, and then you still have your basic personality in the other corner. It's as though you have a dual personality, a Jekyll and Hyde. When you are in the Vedanta class or you're studying your own book, you are a nice person. And then outside and talking to people, you're not such a nice person. That is when we know there is an obstacle dividing between these two segments. If what you are is what you study, then you're done. So this is the reason for the Atma Nigraha. So Swami Paramarthananda kindly has given us 4 different forms of the obstacle. There are many others, but this is somewhat simplified, but the main 4 ones. So, one is called Laya. And I'll describe this in the next few minutes. Laya, Vikshepa, Kashaya, and Rasaswada. These are the 4 obstacles. Laya, Vikshepa, Kashaya, and Rasaswada. Laya. Laya is a dullness and sleepiness of the mind. This is why they say that usually you should not have a heavy meal before coming to a Vedanta class. Because what happens is that, as you know, Ishvara has given you limited supply of oxygen and digestive capacity, limited. So when you have a heavy meal, now all of your oxygen and digestive capacity is devoted towards digesting the food that you have now just burdened yourself with. You shouldn't have eaten that much, but you did. So what to do now? So what happens is that the oxygen is taken away from your brain and put it into your tummy. And so your thinking capacity is diminished. So, and you know what, I've noticed this also. If you do a fast, you are of course very hungry and you are uncomfortable, but your mind is very sharp. So much so, did you know this is an amazing fact? There is a company in San Francisco that insists that people fast every day. It's a technology company where they are brilliant people and they have figured out the same thing. That when you are very hungry, you are uncomfortable physically, but your mental capacity goes up very well. Up to a point. Of course, if you don't eat at all, then the mind also doesn't function. And there was a report about a woman who agreed to join the company, but she couldn't take it after a while. They monitor it for you. No cookies, no snacks, no nothing. The whole day you have to sit there and code. And she says, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. Anyway, this is a fact that really we also request that please, it's okay to have a cup of coffee and maybe a couple of biscuits or something like this, but do not have a heavy meal before coming. In any case, whether you have a heavy meal or not, Laya means, this is a funny thing. I don't know if one of the building owners here who he had come for, he says, I wanted to learn meditation. And he says, I have trouble sleeping at night time because I've got so much going on. So I said, well, come to the meditation class and on Tuesday night, and we'll see what you can get. So he came. You know what he told me later on? He says, I didn't hear a word you said because I went to sleep. So I says, that's good. That's you wanted to sleep anyway, didn't you? Then he came the second time, the same thing happened. He says, now I'm not coming anymore because this is a sure way to go to sleep. This is called laya. This is one obstacle. The second one is called vikshepa. Vikshepa is just the opposite. Means that your mind is hyperactive. Not only is it not going to sleep, it is now overactive. Thinking about a number of things and so on. This is a very common complaint. What happens is that when you are not in meditation, you are busy in doing some things, reading a book or whatever, cooking, etc., etc. So your mind has no space to bother you. But when you are in meditation and you're not doing anything else, you are relatively free. The mind says, this is a good time to bring up these points. By the way, have you sent the money to that person that they requested? So you say, no, not right now. No? Why not? Why not now? So your mind becomes really overactive. And so this is a second one. One is laya, the other one is vikshepa. The third one is called kashaya. And kashaya refers to mind not being sleepy, but just not moving and following the teaching. Just sitting there, just neither absorbing nor going to sleep. It's kind of like a dull mind. And the examples given here are slightly different, but what they said is that supposing you go into a shock. There's a very famous story where there was a poem written about this, that a lady was told that your husband has been killed in a battle. There's some poem, I think we all studied it when I was young. And her mind becomes kashaya. She was so stunned by this news that she did not cry. Did not, obviously not laugh or cry. She just stood there. And everybody was very worried about her. So some old lady in the family brought her child and stuck it into her hands. Then she started crying. Because it was such a stunning news that, oh my God, my young husband has died because in the battle. So it is not a complete example, but when something is told which is enormous, your mind does not react to it. It just sits there and not. So this is called kashaya. The last one is called rasavada. Rasavada. This one is very interesting. And this one was really my obstacle also, and many of our obstacles for a long time. What happens is that as you study Vedanta, you really feel very happy about discovering something profound about yourself. As a result, you just enjoy it. And you don't want to go any further. You just enjoy it. And that happened to me in the beginning when I met both Swami Chinmayananji and Swami Dayanandji. That really I was so overjoyed by the discovery of something so profound in my life that I just wanted to have that experience. Now, it is okay to have that experience, but it stops you from inquiring any further. You haven't really covered all your doubts yet. It is kind of like a honeymoon period. The honeymoon is fine because it's an artificial, combination of a husband and wife, where some of the issues of marriage have not yet come up. And fine, it's okay. This is good for a week or 10 days. But the real happiness will come when you are able to overcome some of the obstacles of the marriage. That's where the joy comes in. Honeymoon is, anybody can have a honeymoon. So this is exactly like this. In the beginning, I also had a honeymoon with the Vedantic teaching. I thought, oh my gosh, this is so very beautiful. That you feel there's nothing, I've already done it. As I was saying earlier, you declare victory too soon. And when the doubts started to come in, when people had questions for you, when you came into situations that were not very pleasant, I was not ready to deal with it. And so one of the obstacles is just enjoying the experience and not really working towards understanding the nature of it, the obstacles to it, how to overcome, all of that. So this is the fourth obstacle. And I think I'll stop there. I'll also have not reviewed all the rest of it. We'll do that next time. So with that, I close today's class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Let me